Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the web seminar, Prouds and Sorries for Agile Project Management and Business Analysis. It features speakers from our upcoming Agile Summit for Project World and World Congress for Business Analysts Conference taking place this November 8th through the 10th in Orlando, Florida. Today's web seminar is a roundtable discussion featuring 4 Agile-focused panelists and an Agile expert moderator. I'd like to welcome our roundtable participants, Manoj Minos, Agile Coach, Release Manager for CGI Federal, Susan Block, Lead Business Systems Analyst for the Vanguard Group, Jana Parts, Head of Section Information Technology, Education Support Systems for Mayo Clinic, and David Grabel, Director of Application Development for Monetrics. Today's roundtable discussion will be moderated by Ellen Gottesdiener, founder and principal consultant of EBG Consulting, Incorporated. Ellen is responsible for planning, organizing, and facilitating our Agile Summit on November 8th. For more information on Project World, you can visit www.projectworld.com. Ellen is founder and principal consultant with EBG Consulting, which helps businesses and technical teams collaborate to define and deliver product customers value and need. Author of 2 acclaimed books, Ellen works with global clients, speaks, and writes. She's passionate about sharing the value of Agile practices for analysis and the discipline of analysis and collaboration for Agile value delivery. Her company, EBG, provides Agile training and coaching to enable her clients to deliver value while developing healthy project communities. For more information from her articles, tweets and blogs, free e-newsletter, and useful practitioner resources on EBG's website, visit www.ebgconsulting.com. Attendees can ask questions by typing them into the question and answer part of their toolbar located on your screen. This session will be recorded and archived so that you can refer to it at any time after the web seminar, or refer it to colleagues who might not have been able to join us today. We will be sending you a link following the web seminar where you can retrieve the archived file. With that said, I'd like to hand it over to our roundtable moderator, Ellen Gottesdiener.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda, and welcome everyone wherever you are dialing in, whatever time it is for you. I hope you have a beautiful sunny day like we have here in New England. We are going to start with the wisdom of our panelists. What we've asked each to do is to briefly introduce themselves to you in turn and provide their bottom line words of wisdom about transitioning to and being in an Agile environment. So I'm thrilled to be in this role facilitating this, and I want to start with our first panelist, Janet. Janet, I'm turning the floor over to you.
Thank you, Ellen. My name is Jana Parts, and I work as an IT manager in the healthcare sector. Specifically, for the last 3 years, I led the team who supports point-of-care learning, traditional e-learning, courseware, and administration supporting Mayo Clinic's College of Medicine. My group has been using Agile techniques for about 2.5 years as we work on a point-of-care learning and knowledge management system. My words of wisdom are this: when you transition to Agile techniques, don't forget long-standing project basics. That is, a strong, engaged business owner is critical for success. You need to build and nurture an open, transparent, and trusting relationships with your business partners. This will be important as the inevitable roadblocks or issues emerge.
Fabulous. That was wonderful. Thanks for that, Janet. How about you, Manoj? Could you introduce yourself and tell us your wisdom?
Thank you, Ellen. My name is Manoj Minos. I work for CGI Federal as an Agile coach and a release manager. Our company provides outsourcing services for mostly federal agencies in the area. Our company has been, our team has been using Agile for the last about a year. The hard lesson that I've learned is that sometimes as a coach you need to let your team fail and learn a lesson from it. The key is to let the team fail in small ways and learn quickly than failing in bigger releases. So it's okay if the team fails, but make sure your team fails on something smaller and make sure that team learns from it.
Great. Thank you so much, Manoj. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Susan Block. Take it away, Susan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Block, and I work as a lead business systems analyst for the Vanguard Group here in Pennsylvania. We're a financial services company that provides investment products and services to retail and institutional clients. I also happen to be the president of the Philadelphia IIBA chapter and a proud CBAT. As a business analyst, I've worked in the Agile environment now for 4 years, and my words of wisdom are to make sure that the team holds each other accountable for Agile practices.
Did we lose you?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, go ahead. Thought we lost you for a moment.
Oh, no, that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So my words of wisdom are really to look for leadership within the team, to hold each other accountable, to practice Agile best practices on a regular basis, and to continuously educate everyone around the team to make sure that they have the empowerment they need to go forward.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Sue. Appreciate it. And David, proud to introduce you. David, could you tell us your words of wisdom and introduce yourself? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I'm having some phone problems. So, David, did you get to finish?
I believe that David's phone dropped as
Hi,
well.
I'm back in.
I'm
back in.
Yeah, my line did not pick up. I'm sorry. Apologies to the audience, but I am on the microphone now. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. David?
Yep,
You
I'm
get
here.
to finish?
I can introduce myself. I'm David Grable, and Director of Applications Development at Minetrix, which is a software company focusing on automating human judgment in consumer loan decisions. And we are a wholly owned subsidiary of a large privately held company called JM Family Enterprises. Our main line of business is being the exclusive distributor for Toyotas in the Southeast United States. I'm also actively involved while it's optimal to have co-located teams, if offshore development is unavoidable for whatever reason in your organization, then I've become convinced that Scrum is the only method that I would use to manage a project that includes onshore and offshore groups. But the key to making that work is to stick to the Agile Manifesto. Keep that in the forefront of your mind.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, panelists, for sharing your words of wisdom. Now, what I want to do is give everyone a brief overview to what our agenda is going to be. So we have these prouds and sorries, things that we're proud of that have worked well that we would continue doing, and regrets are things that if we could, we'd redo or do differently in 4 category areas, as you see here. Now, what we'll do is I'll introduce that category area, and our panelists will give us the prouds and sorries for those categories. In between and along the way, we'll have some polls so that we get some information from you, and our esteemed panelists can adapt some of their answers to your questions. So what we want to do now is start with that first question. We need some input from you. We need to learn who's here. So what is your role? You see this list of items beginning with project leader, manager, down through developer or architect. Would you kindly respond to the poll? So we're going to start the poll, Melissa. Poll is open right now. This is great. Everybody's clicking in, and we looking like we have a good mix of people here. Melissa, looks like just about everybody's polled in. About 78% of you have voted. Polls closed. Show us the findings, please. And you can all see the poll results. And we have 29% of you project leads and 43 analysts and a combination. So that's a really interesting mix here. And I'd ask our panelists to keep that in mind as you go through the next set of questions and provide your prouds and sorries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so let's talk about our first topic area, delivering value. Now, our panelists are going to answer or respond to the prouds and sorries in delivering value. What I mean by this is, and I will also say that occasionally you may hear me or our panelists mention a practice in Agile, such as test-driven development, continuous delivery, and so forth, that you may or may not be familiar with. Now, our purpose here is not to provide an overview to these practices. If you need some of that information, you can ask a question. We can provide information after our webinar today. So, delivering value is about how you measure your results, how you do valuation, return on investment. What metrics do you use in your project, and also what planning practices you may be doing around, say, product road mapping, release or iteration planning, or if you're using Kanban for planning, all about delivering value. So what I'd like to do is ask our panelists to first begin with their prouds, and then we'll do the sorries. So Janet, would you kindly start with your prouds in the area of delivering value?
I'm happy to. I have 3 things to share. We're really proud that we've been able to create a culture of how we can help. As new needs and opportunities arose over the course of our project, we've been able to accommodate those. We've also used a multi-iteration roadmap for our product effectively. We keep it visible in the room where we have team meetings and daily stand-ups. And most importantly, I think we're really proud that we've gone from a project that many doubted we could do it to one of strategic priority and high credibility. We did that by delivering customer value regularly, reliably, and sustainably. Agile techniques played a major role in our success.
Great. Okay. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. How about Manoj? What are your prouds in delivering value?
Thank you. In almost all the projects I worked in, the customer wanted the project yesterday. I'm sure everybody can relate to that. But there was one project where the corporation wanted the customer to start using the system, but the customer didn't want it. It wasn't the value, but the perception of it that was important at that point. So when we initially proposed an iterative development and agile mode of working, and the frequent customer interaction data said, customers said they didn't have time. But after a couple of iterations, when the customer realized that they have a lot more control over what the team is building, they were on board. So our team was proud of the fact that we could deliver, we could change to what the customer needs and deliver what the customer needs.
That's awesome. Okay. How about you, David?
Yes, in the area of delivering value, I'm proudest of the fact that we're making effective use of user stories and acceptance tests to the point where they are estimable in story points, and our metric for progress is story points, and that's proved very valuable for us. My sorry is that on the large offshore co-development project that we did, while we were delivering value to our internal user proxy on every iteration, the nature of the project and prevented us from doing true regular deployments into production, and we had to rely on a big bang transition for a major upgrade when going into production. Luckily, it went smoothly, but that was a risk.
Okay, we're gonna ask now Susan for your Pratt, and then we'll wrap around to the rest of the SARIs, the folks for the SARIs. Sue?
Sure. I think what I'm most proud of is being on a leading-edge team that was able to develop metrics to monitor and measure the performance of delivering value to the business client against a product backlog. So on a regular basis, our team adopted the old change control board meeting and made it into a backlog management meeting where we were able to assign business value to all of the features as they were completed. And it was great for us to understand in a metrics fashion how our business client was viewing our accomplishments. Wow, that's excellent. All right, folks, so let's switch to the SARIs. We heard, thank you, David, about your SARI. Could you start the next round, Janet? What are the things that you have regrets and SARIs about in this category? Well, one of them is that we've been struggling to show business value of our product in more than just qualitative or anecdotal terms. We have plenty of those stories, but actually having concrete data has been difficult for us. And then the other thing is we struggled a bit to incorporate good user research into our work cycle, and it's been difficult for us to work that through.
Okay. How about you, Manoj?
My story was that in some cases the team come in and say, I can't break down my big story into smaller stories in this particular iteration. And we finally end up, and giving into that, is that my story? So at the end, we'll end up having, most of the coding is done, but no working software. That's giving into that type of working environment is my story.
Very good. Thanks for sharing that. And David, we heard yours, and Sue?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'd like to see us get better at is revisiting our business cases. We tend to dive deep once the project is underway into measuring the incremental delivery, but we don't necessarily tie it back to the original vision and the original funding allocation that was asked to start the larger projects. So we'd like to be able to tie those things together.
Oh, that's excellent. That's great. Great information. So we heard a lot of really interesting stuff around metrics and user stories, story points, and the Big Bang transition difficulty. I wonder if any of you have any comments about each other's comments. Anything ring a bell for you? Anybody? Any of the panel?
Yeah, the difficulty in really getting the development team to focus on what Agile calls slicing the cake properly, and not only getting work done, but delivering business value and completed user stories and backlog items within an iteration. That took us a long time to get to. We're finally there. But that was probably the hardest transition, and I think there was some reference to that I can appreciate.
How about others? That idea of slicing the requirements, which are often in the form of user stories, small enough to get to value quickly, that's often a big thing that we see also in teams. Other of you had transition issues with that?
Yes, Ellen, this is Sue. I was on a team when we were new where it was really difficult because we didn't have any history to rely on. So I would recommend that teams just do a regular retrospective to look at how they can improve their slicing techniques and learn as they go to get better and better at that at being able to slice those stories appropriately.
Yeah, wow, that's a great comment. Okay, so I'm going to switch to our next topic area in a moment, but we need some more information from you all that are listening today. we'd like to know, how is it that you're getting to Agile? What is your primary driver for transitioning to Agile? So the poll is going to open up, and Melissa's going to show you these poll questions. What is your primary driver for transitioning to Agile? This is going to be helpful for us for our next set of questions. And the poll's open. Thank you. We've got making progress in responding here. The majority of people are, it seems, it's somewhere along that transition. There's very few folks that are answering in category E as the polls are coming in. And we've got about close to 80% of you have provided this information. This is going to be really helpful for our next category. Okay, Melissa, you want to show us our poll results? So for the most part, it's about getting to that value quicker, getting to delivery quicker, as you can see. And in some cases, a lower minority of folks, management decisions. So it's about value, faster delivery, rather, and value. Okay, so that's really useful information, and let's move on to the next topic area, which is teamwork and collaboration. And what our panelists are going to do this time is they're going to start, we're going to do the reverse order. Please just start with your sorries. And after everyone's shared that, then we'll go to our prouds. Teamwork and collaboration, what we're looking for you to share with us here is stuff like roles and responsibilities. You know, an Agile job, just classic silo job descriptions are really kind of turned on their head. So how you deal with that, and team organization, chartering the team, practices that help the team collaborate, like your daily stand-ups and the retrospectives that Sue mentioned earlier, demos, reviews, definition of done. What's the story here? So this time I'm going to ask Sue to please start with the sorries. Sue?
Sure, Ellen. Thank you. Well, a couple of things that I know that we'd like to get better at again are really defining roles and responsibilities, because Agile provides such a different framework for people to work together. I think it takes a long time for us to catch up on creating the infrastructure to support that objective. A lot of our infrastructure still relies on people having separate expected results for performance management, separate chains of command in terms of organizational structure. And so I think it's a challenge for us to marry that up together between what the team should be functioning on a day-to-day basis and how people are individually measured in the organization and how the organization measures itself in terms of its own performance. So it's really hard to be able to bring a team together if the infrastructure behind it isn't fully evolved.
Wow, okay. A lot of meat behind that answer. Thank you, Sue. David, how about your experience?
Sure. As part of our offshore development, one of the key success factors was having an extremely knowledgeable technical liaison from our offshore company on site throughout the entire project, sitting with our development team. However, the sorry that resulted out of that was we over-relied on that person for the first third or so of the project to be the funnel of the information to and from the offshore team outside of the daily scrum. So when we got into any depth, any of those in-depth meetings all were funneled through that liaison. And as a result, there were too many lines of communication and some of the real business requirements were missed. When we recognized that, we opened up the lines and, as part of our daily video conference, had the team offshore speak directly to the subject matter experts and product owner and business analysts who were here in our office, and the deliveries in terms of meeting the business requirement zoomed after that. It was a much deeper understanding. So just be careful of information funnels versus radiators.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much, David. Manoj, what can you share for us?
Thank you, Alan. At this time, If it's okay, I'm going to share an experience that I had which kind of mixes the prouds and sorries. So I was working with a new team, new organization, and the team was very familiar with the traditional way of working. And there was a lot of resistance to collaborate across the team, especially between the business analyst and the developer and the testers. So I tried to push and push to get them try different ways of working together, but they don't even come to some of my meetings that I scheduled to brainstorm. And after a couple of iterations, maybe 3 iterations or so, someone found a big problem. We had a lot of places, the system was failing, system wasn't doing what it was supposed to do in some cases. It was doing wrong calculations, and there was a lot of confusion. And the next stand-up meeting, somebody suggested maybe the developer and the tester should pair up for some time, maybe 3 hours today, and figure out, list all the issues that we had. And we did that, and we come up with about 50 to 80 issues. And at the end, we came together, reviewed all the issues. At the end of it, I asked this question, so what did we learn from the situation? And many of them said, we should do this pairing up thing very often. And I had, at that time, I had to bite my tongue not to say, I told you so. So that was my experience. And what I learned was that sometimes we need to let the team fail and learn from it, but let them fail on small issues and learn from it faster.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a great story. Thanks so much for sharing that. Janet, what can you share about your stories?
Yeah, thank you. I would share that sometimes during our daily stand-ups, people report that they have no impediments when in fact they really do. And we've tried to create a culture where people feel empowered to say those impediments so that folks like me can help remove barriers if that's the deal. We're getting a little better at that, but we still need to improve that willingness to create an environment which allows that to happen. And it might be a bit of, well, I can't have the impediments because I'm so good, but we struggle with that a bit. The other thing that I would share is we've relied a lot on contracted resources, and we have some issues when those folks leave for more permanent positions, and we need to really spend more time making sure that a new person gets incorporated into the team well and early, and we need to be more proactive. And sometimes I think we get lost in the press of our daily activities and forget to work proactively on that teamwork and introducing new people.
Okay, excellent. All right, and Manoj, you provided your combination answer. Well, let's turn back to you, Sue, in terms of your prouds in this area.
Yep. Well, I think when we adopted Agile, we really tried to stay true to some of the key principles. And one of the things that we did was to really start looking for skill sets that could be aligned. And I know that we already mentioned the pairing concept. We went one step further. We actually combined roles between a business analyst and system tester. And we formalized that through the organization, just within my division. And we've been experimenting with that now for about 2 years so that we can support Agile teams by having a dual skill set. And so it's got its ups and downs, but I would still say that I was proud with the experiment that we embarked on and that we've learned a lot from.
Wow, great. Thanks for sharing that. David?
Yes. With respect to the offshore team, in order to promote teamwork and collaboration, at the very beginning of the project, we took the initial assigned team of all of the developers, QA people at the offshore site and brought them to our U.S. office for 4 weeks. And they worked in our office. They shared cube space with our development team. We taught them about the business. We taught them about the specifics of the process that we were using. And most importantly, we had a lot of meals together, lunches out or a couple of evenings getting together, and breaking the bread together really led to bonding. so that as we suffer through the ups and downs of the next 15 months through the project, each side saw the other as people and not just resources.
Great. Breaking bread. Thank you. And doing that face-to-face stuff. Great. So how about you, Janet?
Well, I think co-location has been kind of the home run for us in terms of building teamwork and collaboration. Nearly all of our team are co-located together, and it's a mixture of our technical staff, our analyst staff, our quality staff, and our content staff, because we have a knowledge repository system that we're working on. And when you come into our building, and it's not a glamorous spot, you can actually feel the sense of teamwork and cooperation between the whole team. It's really very cool. The other thing that we've done is we've used cross-functional groups of people to work on our user interface. We have a designer who provides ideas, but then we've got this robust group of multi-talented folks that provide input. We've got great spirited dialogue going on during those meetings, and it's really fun to both watch and participate in that conversation. So I think the strength of open communication comes out again for teamwork.
Wow, that's great. You all shared some really good stuff. Just, I'm curious, in listening to some of the comments that you all made and the role merging of roles and not being so bound by a particular job description like Sue described, or where you were just talking about, Janet, with having cross-functional teams involved in UX. Has that happened in your teams where people started taking on the work as needed to get the job done? Have you seen that? Have you observed that in your teams?
Ellen,
That's just recently taken root in our team.
This is David speaking, right?
This is David. Yes, sir.
David, and then Sue we'll go to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where we now have the developers swarming around testing tasks, and we have the development team assisting the business analyst in decomposing epics into user stories and identifying acceptance tests. We've just semi-formalized a role. We use the name, it's not official yet, of BAQA, which is BAQA, particularly where we're using business analysts doing acceptance tests from the business perspective. And it really adds another dimension to the robustness of the testing process.
Cool. So that's a great segue for you, Sue.
Yep. As I mentioned, we took a more formal approach to one pairing, but I think in an informal way, the team can constantly encourage, and management can certainly support and recognize people that are stepping out of their boundaries. So recognizing skill sets, developing skill sets in a less formal way is a good way to kind of plant the seeds for folks to really become bigger contributors on the team and to really show that they're stepping up to get the job done and not be forced into it just because of a job role or a job title. So I think it can be done in both manners, bottom up and top down.
Great.
This is Janet, and I would share that we also have folks who go outside their defined role and participate, especially in things like requirements and testing, not so much in the technical development, but it's been very helpful. And what it does is it creates a sense of community ownership, and people now start to value everybody's broader skill set as well.
Great. Okay, thanks a lot for sharing that. What I want to do is bring our audience back in here. We're going to have another poll question for you. If we could show the poll, Melissa, we need to get some background information for you before we get into technical practices. So the poll is now open for you to answer this question. My organization has been using some form of Agile practices for how many years? Please take a moment and respond to this poll and get a flavor for the amount of experience of folks that are listening in to us today. And we got about 70% of you keyed in your answer so far. Take another couple seconds, and then Melissa will show you the findings here. Okay, Melissa, it's about 80% of you have told us that we have quite a split here with a minority, and this is, I think, not unexpected, a minority with four or more years, and then we're pretty much about 20% in the other categories, and about a quarter of you are here that haven't been using Agile yet, and we welcome you and welcome you into this conversation. So thanks for answering that, and this may be a little helpful for our panelists as they answer the next question. So if we're going to, you can close the poll results, if you would, Melissa, and I'm going to show the next topic area, technical practices. Okay, so there's a lot of practices that over time teams, the business and technical teams, start to adapt, and Agile really is a transition. And so I'm going to mention some of those practices as examples that our panelists may be responding to with their prouds and sorries. So for example, continuous integration, test-driven development, automated testing, refactoring, management of their requirements, which is, and automating some of the management of their requirements. User acceptance testing or behavior-driven development, version control, and so forth. Many of them are engineering practices. So let's hear from you, beginning this time with David. What I'd like to do is have you mix both your proud first and then your sorry. So we'll do prouds and sorries for each of you. And David, could you kick us off here with technical practices?
Sure. The thing that I'm most proud of is the use of automated testing. It includes unit testing, automated GUI testing, load and performance testing, security testing, because we're dealing with a lot of privacy data, and regression testing. And the value that that's delivered is, before we fully embarked on this, to go from final build or release candidate to release to production used to be 1 to 1.5 sprints, so it could be 2 to 3 weeks to go through all of the regression testing to make sure that as we pulled it all together, it worked. Even doing continuous integration, we still have that regression testing cycle. We now have that down to somewhere in the range of 24 to 48 hours. So when we finish our last sprint, it takes us no more than 2 days to be able to deliver a package that's been fully tested and ready for deployment into production. My sorry, just following on that, is that our approach is still test last. So we write the code and then we test it, as opposed to test first, which would be get all the tests together, build the test, and then write the code.
Very good. Great. Thank you so much. Janet, would you follow?
Sure. One of the things that I'm proud of is we've been able to build an independent software quality process, testing process, into our team in a very collaborative way. Our engineer has has created an atmosphere of honesty, which is not judgmental, and it's very team-oriented. In other words, he works with the team and not management when reporting defects. So I think that's been very helpful for us. In opposition to what David just said, we haven't been able to move to more automated testing, and we would like to do that because we see the potential value there, but we just haven't figured out how best to do that.
Okay. Good. Thanks for sharing that. So now, Sue, would you tell us your prouds and sorries?
Sure. Around technical practices, we also have invested in test automation for our system-level testing, and we're looking to expand that into user acceptance testing as well. And one of the other things that we've invested in for tools and support is repositories. So we are able to manage our requirements and our test cases in a centralized place where we can trace them to each other, we can reuse material as we evolve the product, and it really allows, all of those practices allow us to pick up that speed that many of our callers in today are concerned about improving on their delivery. I think one of the sorries is that the justification to spend on these tools and to invest the resource time it takes to set them up and manage them properly and derive that value is something that's challenging, for us to spend the time away from other activities that we're responsible for and kind of invest in ourselves and our longer-term value for the team to pick up that velocity.
Wow, okay, great. Manoj, would you share yours, please?
Sure. Before I start, I want to say most of our customers are outside our organization. So this is an outsourcing environment where we get the requirements at some point of time and we deliver the product at the end. So including or involving the customer in the beginning or from the beginning onwards was difficult. My proud is that we, as an organization, was able to include the customer from the beginning in even to write our acceptance criteria for each user story from the beginning. And that was a big win. And that gave us a very value that the user was looking for. My story was that we didn't have a very mature, very good process to mature our user stories or requirements. So we needed JATs to be done, we needed mock-ups to be done, we need to get input from various stakeholders around the country to give us feedback to finalize our screens and flows and things like that. That process wasn't really outlined at the beginning, and that's something that we are working on right now, and that's one of my stories.
Oh, okay, great. So we had quite an interesting conversation here on how important the testing and automated testing, as Dave kicked us off, was to some of your practices. Anything else that anybody would add, having heard each other, in terms of technical practices that remind you of things you're doing well or might do differently? For example, Mike, I'm curious if any of your teams are refactoring as they go and making that perhaps part of doneness criteria or having stories for refactoring. And refactoring, by the way, is making the excellence of the code base, increasing the excellence of the code base without changing the external behavior of the product. Anybody working on that?
I think, Ellen, this is Jana. We're not working on that, but I think that's a great solution for some of the technical debt that I see that we've taken on in order to deliver fast. So I think that would be something that would be helpful for us to do.
Okay, thanks, Jana. How about you, Sue? You were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I think our development team has invested in quality practices such as code inspections and code reviews to be able to build that quality in or to refactor it as needed.
Great. Yeah, I worked with a team, and what we did was define the definition of done, included doing several reviews of code throughout the iteration. Anybody else want to add anything, Manoj or David, on that area? Okay. So, by the way, I want to just remind you all listening in, the audience, that at any point in time, if you have questions, please key in your questions, because we'll have a Q&A period at the end. So you may, hear some interesting things that we'd like to see your questions. Okay, so now we're going to move to the next category, but we also have another poll question for you. Melissa, would you open up the poll? Our last category is going to be communication and change. So we have an important question to ask you before we tackle that one. And that is, our chief impediment to success with Agile is? And the answer, as best you can, I know a few of you out there aren't currently using Agile, but if you are, our chief impediment with using Agile is. So we'll take a few seconds here and allow you to enter your responses to this. Got about half of the folks have answered here. And we have a overwhelmingly large answer in one category, which will not surprise any of you, I'm sure. Just a few more seconds. If you could please answer this poll question, that would be really helpful, in particular for this last category. So about 75% of folks have answered. Okay, Melissa, looks like everybody that's going to answer is done. So would you show us the findings here? And no surprise, I think, for you to see that that last one, organizational culture or external constraints, is overwhelmingly the biggest impediment, followed by skills and business involvement. Okay, so I'll ask our panelists to keep their eyes on this as you answer questions, your prouds and sorries in the next category. Would you close that out, Melissa, for us? Thank you. Okay, so our fourth and final proud and sorry category is communication and change. And what we're talking about here are things like how the team communicates with each other, how it manages visibility, what we call in Agile information radiators, how you communicate up and to and with the business and with other IT groups and the business with you in the technical area, Kaizen or continuous improvement, how you're managing organizational change, which was obviously a big issue for folks, how you deal with adjusting plans based on retrospectives and results, how do you manage impediments. So those are all some of the things that we'll ask you as a panelist to share with your prouds and sorries. And Manoj, I'm going to ask you to kick us off. And I'd like to follow that format we just did with both proud followed by sorry. Manoj?
Okay. For the past couple of teams that I worked with, the good thing that I found was that start the change small. And what I found was that organizing the project in terms of user stories and feature lists and things like that give us the biggest bang for the buck. So at the end of the iteration, we deliver something. We may not have the self-organization yet. We may not have some of the technical practices yet, but we still try to organize our project in that manner in terms of user stories or features. And when teams get that, and teams maybe even get bored with that new things, maybe we will include some of the new things, the TDD and something like that. That's the proud that I've seen in the last couple of teams. And the sorry that I have seen is that we don't get the self-organization. That was the hardest part that I'm seeing in my teams. The story that I see, the story that I feel sometimes is that when the team member comes into a stand-up meeting and say, I'm done with what I was assigned to, what do the team leader or Scrum Master tell me what I should do next? I was hoping that the team member will pick up the next one from the charts that we have or the list of things that we have in the backlog. But as opposed to that, they will come and say, tell me what I should work on.
Okay, great. Thank you for that story. How about you, Sue? Could you tell us your proud and sorries here?
Yep. Well, I think because I work for a pretty decent-sized enterprise, I think when we adopted Agile for our entire IT organization, it was challenging to start to put together a support model to roll out that change. And one of the things that we did well was to put people in positions where they were full-time Agile coaches within the organization. And these folks were responsible to constantly consult and work with teams to get them up and running and to really share the best practices across the enterprise. So having a support model for individual teams that span the enterprise was something that really helped us. And I can say also one of the smaller things that we do on a local level is to do a scrum of scrums. To have tight coordination between teams that have dependencies on each other. And then for folks that are in centralized roles, like database administrators and UX design folks, we count on them as support teams. They're not necessarily embedded in the team, but we're looking to create models to help integrate them into the team who's trying to deliver and produce products that incorporate those needs. from a SARI's perspective, I would say that it's still a little bit of a struggle to get the business to be fully engaged in projects because they have operational responsibilities. It's an age-old problem to have folks that are our business clients have businesses to run, daily jobs to do, and still support project development. So I think, from a communication and change perspective, that's something, that we're still working through with different types of solutions.
Wow. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that, Stu. How about you, David? Your prouds and sorries in this area?
Sure. With communication within the various teams, we made extensive use of video conferencing. We had pretty decent quality broadband connected and good quality audio and video systems, and used that to keep the teams connected and requiring sufficient overlap that there was at least 3-hour overlap even though we were 9.5 time zones apart. And we also made extensive use of webinars where we could have in 4 or 5 different cities a web designer, a graphic designer, UI developers, subject matter experts, and they, in real time, they could bring up proposals, get feedback, change the design in real time, and everybody see it all at once. So we use the technology to bridge the gap of distance and time zones. On the SARI side, we did end up with some disconnects between the product owner, who was a subject matter expert and very closely aligned with the team working the details of the user stories and making trade-offs on features that made it versus features that had to be cut in terms of priorities and sticking to time boxes. And there were too many occasions where the power users and subject matter experts would attend our end-of-sprint reviews, surprised at a decision that had been made by the product owner and that they hadn't been informed or properly brought on board before seeing the demo.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that, David. Janet, can I turn over to you?
I think that the thing I'm most proud about in terms of change is that early in the life cycle of our project, we were faced with the realities of the economic downturn. When our just recently approved and large project budget was scoped back dramatically. We faced that by being very transparent with our staff and with our business owners, and we all engaged in some very creative thinking. And what we were able to do then was to scope deliverables to the very highest value items. That was a tough time, but as I look back over the course of our project, this probably was one of the greatest enablers of our success. So it forced us to be lean, which I think was really important. The other thing that I would say is we work really hard to make sure that the communications go both up and down in a continuous circle. So as we report statuses and information upwards to management, we make sure that we report back and share feedback and things that happen at the upper levels to our working teams. So we all kind of stay in that same loop. The one thing that I would share, though, as a story from our perspective is we know that there's value in making decisions as late as possible, but we still have some folks who have considerable angst about that, and they're worried about missing expectations and not delivering what's really needed because we don't have all of the decisions made up front for a long period of time. So we'd like to work on that as well.
Okay, great. This was really a lot of really rich information, and with the remaining minutes that we have, I just want to move into sort of a recap and then take a few questions that Amanda's going to help read out to us. So we talked about, you all talked about those 4 categories that we see here. And first, before we go to the question, I just want to express my deep appreciation of our panelists today, because I think that the folks listening and calling in and hearing would agree that you're hearing the real story here, not just the kudos and that it's all ice cream and cupcakes, that the transition to Agile takes work, and you're hearing some honest, transparent truths here, which is very much like being Agile, that, you know, we want to tell the truth, and trust and transparency is very much part of it. So I'm really proud that you all were proud to share your prouds and sorry. So I just want to personally thank you all for doing that. And can we take a few questions? We have a few minutes to do that. Amanda?
Yes, we actually have had a number of questions come through during the web seminar, and if you have further questions, feel free to enter them into your question section of your toolbar, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. One of the questions is, some in our company think that because there are so many interrelated components affected, that Agile is not as appropriate for us. How would you deal with that?
And interrelated components, was there any more information in that? I just wanted to clarify. Was there anything else?
No, that was the single part of the question. Some in our company think that because there are so many interrelated components affected, that Agile is not appropriate for us.
Okay, so let me open the floor. Would any of you like to take a stab at that? Because it's not totally clear what our questioner means by interrelated components, but I'm guessing that, you know, that it's multiple areas within the business as well as perhaps technical activities. What do you think, panelists?
This is Sue.
I'll take a
and I don't
quick
know
step.
if this answers the question,
okay.
but
I'm sorry. Two of you started talking at once.
Oh.
So who is that? Janet that jumped in, and Sue?
Yeah, I did. This is Janet.
Okay.
Should I go?
Janet and then Sue. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
We actually, within our project, have two interrelated components. Now, it's not organizational-wide interdependencies, but we do have two interrelated components. And we struggled with some of that in terms of how we were going to coordinate deployments and shared resources and all those things. But what we did to address that was we actually worked with our project managers to make sure that we were not overlapping and we weren't trying to both tap the same shared resources at the same time. So what it did was, what we had to do was take an active role in looking for those interdependencies and then try to manage them within each little life cycle of the interdependencies.
Mm-hmm. Good. So it sounded like you and the management really stepped in to manage that and didn't leave the team thrashing to deal with that. Excellent. Sue, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that I'm not as clear about what components mean in this context, but either from a technical or a business standpoint, I think that if there is a lot of interdependencies, as Janet mentioned, that program planning is something that could be instituted across teams so that there is technical oversight and coordination as well as business interfacing going on for product road mapping. And so having a higher level of participation to help coordinate teams that are moving forward might help with the interrelationship. Excellent.
Yep, and doing that in a collaborative way, I find, of course, and that's inferred in your answer. That's really, really key. Okay, great. Do we have another one? Maybe we could fit in one more, Amanda?
We sure do. Did anyone have a single critical resource that, when not available, essentially stalled the project? How did you deal with this?
Amanda,
so
this is Sue. I'll jump in quickly.
This is David.
I would say a database administrator. Because if you're waiting for a database to be developed, you've got all your design ready to go, and you can't actually deploy and start coding against that structure that you need. That's something that you need to build in the right lead time to get that done and ready for the team to have its momentum not come to a grinding halt.
Okay, excellent. David?
Yes, we have a current situation where we had a business analyst who was dedicated to one of our Scrum teams, and another business analyst from a waterfall team that was in mission-critical projects resigned, and the business analyst from the Scrum team is temporarily reassigned to the other projects. And the Scrum team is trying to grapple with that. And what we're trying to use is a combination of user proxies, client service reps, subject matter experts, and the team themselves to work on decomposing user stories and acceptance tests. And it's a bit of a drag, but it's because it's not quite as efficient, but it's an attempt to prevent the team from coming to a grinding halt for a lack of user stories that have been properly groomed.
And that sort of goes to the point of how, a team in flow, in rhythm, that has a steady velocity, you mess around with that team in any way, and it changes things big time, and there's relearning and so forth. Those are really great, helpful answers. I appreciate that. Amanda, I think we need to turn over the floor to you to wrap up.
Yep, we are all out of time. I'd like to thank Manoj Vadakan, Susan Block, Jana Parts, David Grabel, and Ellen Gottesdiener for sharing their experiences with us today. We hope you enjoyed the web seminar, and we'll be sending you a link to the archived versions shortly. If you'd like to learn more about Agile management and meet today's speakers in person, we invite you to join us at the Project World and World Congress for Business Analysis Conference taking place November 8th through the 10th at the Disney World Swan in Orlando, Florida. To learn more about this event, visit www.projectworld.com, or you can email Amanda Powers at apowers@iirusa.com. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.